Welcome along to the MODUS Super Series, where today we are having a look at some of the biggest bust-ups in the history of the sport of darts. We're going to do it in the company of Matthew Edgar, a man who's not too backwards in coming forwards and not too shy to have the odd moment or two on stage. And over the years, there's been one or two moments which have, let's say, more than caught the eye.
There have. There's been many situations and so some of them I think there's been a bit more made of it, and some of them I think have gone completely under the radar. There's some people who are a little bit more sneaky with things, aren't they? But we're going to have a cast through some of the more popular ones today and cast a bit of an opinion and give a bit of insight.
But I tell you what, we're going to start straight from the get-go. I think we're going to have to talk about the one, the incident. Gary Anderson, Gerwyn Price, Grand Slam final 2018. It's the one that everybody springs to mind about, isn't it?
That's not the one we've just watched. You've just shown me one clip and then asked me a question about a different one. What are you playing? That's... We watched Gerwyn Price, Adrian Lewis. What was that? Who's Gerwyn Price, Adrian Lewis, Matt? I'm going to ask you about Gary Anderson, Gerwyn Price. What? Can I have a different presenter, please?
Well, our first incident's that Grand Slam final between Gerwyn Price and Gary Anderson in 2018. Perhaps the most infamous incident of its kind. And it was a game that kind of just transfixed not just darts but the whole sport. Well, everybody spoke about that incident afterwards.
I mean, what a great place to start with this. I mean, when we look at this incident, it built, didn't it? It really did. I mean, one of the things that sort of caught the eye very early on was sort of the interactions between the two. You know when something's coming when the players are starting to make the eye contact. You can sort of see it coming because most players that take the darts out of the board, the head's down. One thing I quite liked about this incident, though, was the way that Gerwyn Price, he kept looking over towards, like, his family. It was like he was trying to get his family involved a little bit with him, and he was sort of pointing at Gary a little bit, wasn't he? This game also resulted in the largest fine that has ever been issued by the DRA on a player. Gerwyn Price did contest it and get it reduced, but again, controversy in the fact that off that DRA sort of referral, Gary Anderson did not get fined. Gerwyn Price got fined heavily. So again, that was something that was very interesting about this incident. What happened away from the Yoki as well. Gary Anderson, we know, did put his hands on Gerwyn Price. He went into the Yoki a little bit quick. Gerwyn Price was still there. Gary Anderson gave him the most gentlest of shoves, of course. But Gerwyn Price, being Gerwyn, wanted to sort of get into that moment, wanted Gary to sort of answer himself. It really was a to-in and throw-in, wasn't it? But I think the reason the fine was so heavy on that situation was because it wasn't just that game for Gerwyn that week. It was that game, and I believe the quarterfinals as well. I think he played Simon Whitlock, and I think that game was part of that fine as well. So it was like a collective fine. But when Gerwyn Price was sort of on the way up, he really was one of these characters that sort of in your face, very loud, very brash, didn't really care for much of what your opponent wants to do or say or think. Didn't care what people thought about him. And I think over time, maybe he's just lost a little bit of that. And that was the Gerwyn Price that was a winner.
Did he set the precedent, the change of the sport, and the fact that when he started doing what he was doing, it was kind of frowned upon by a lot of the darting community, whereas now the celebration is a little bit more commonplace in the game?
I would say he brought the sport back, because when we look back, and people say you wouldn't have got that back in the day. Yes, you would. There's a reason the exclusion zone exists, and that's because Rod Harrington kicked someone in the back of the legs. Was it Keith Deller?
Keith Deller, it was, yeah.
Kicking him in the back of the legs while he's playing his game. That's why the exclusion zone was invented. Eric Bristow, watch his games back. He turns around and screams in people's faces. Like, the sport was a lot more rough, a lot more rugged than it is now. And Gerwyn Price sort of was one of the old school rather than the new school. And I think we're just seeing that creep in maybe a little bit more. And I like it. I like a little bit of needle in the game. I think we need it at times. Not everyone is friends. But in the heat of battle, you can't always be the best of friends.
Well, the first flashpoint came in the third break. Gerwyn Price hit a double 10 to go 8-7 up in that particular match. He was celebrating, and Gary Anderson gave the old eye to say, what's he doing? And then Gerwyn Price with the old that to Gary Anderson in between the advert breaks, timing what he was doing kind of perfectly. And you could just tell by the end, Gary was seething.
Some players don't like celebrations. James Wade, Gary Anderson, Mervyn King. They're sort of that era or that sort of type of player. I don't think it's generational because you get different types of people in every generation. They're of that sort of way that I just want to get on with the game. I don't want to celebrate taking out a 2-0 lead or things. I spent a lot of time with Kevin Painter, who was, again, quite very similar to that sort of attitude. And he would look at the moment and he'd be like, why are you celebrating? It's like first to 10 and it's 3-1. Why are you running around the stage? So when you look at it that way, you can sort of see part of the argument, but on the same aspect, you never know what an important moment is till the end of the game. So, I mean, I'm one of those people that I have to really channel and really bottle it up because I just want to be exploding all the time. It was actually Michael Smith that said, hold it back, keep it in, or else you're going to lose sort of that sort of focus and drive. Gerwyn Price is a player that needs that, and he needs that fire and he needs that focus and drive, and that sort of celebration, shall we say, brings the best out in him. It's just not a good dynamic. One player likes to give it, one player wants to be reserved. It
was that tempestuous that they didn't even have a trophy presentation at the end. They just gave Gerwyn the trophy, no interviews, none of the usual charades that you get in the end of a major final. That was how much it reached boiling point.
Judging by what you said at the end, I'm guessing tempestuous means
tempestuous,
like it was fiery.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, yeah, brilliant. So yeah, I get that, and sometimes it's got to diffuse it a little bit, and that's just their method of trying to diffuse the situation. Don't put them in the same bit. Remember at school when, well, maybe not yourself, but when something.
Wait, I was a bad boy.
When something kicked off, it'd be like, right, go to different ends of the playground, sort of thing. Now that's all that was. You on that side of the stage, you on that.
It was certainly an interesting incident. Let's move on to another game. What do you want to talk about? I'm going to give the option up to you. Which game do you want to talk about next?
Do you know what, right? We're going to stick with Gerwyn Price. And we're going to go with Gerwyn Price and Adrian Lewis at the World Match Play.
Yes.
And the reason I really like that game is because it was everything that I've just described there in terms of Gerwyn Price and the heat of the battle. As soon as the game was over, they shook hands, they smiled. Yes, Adrian Lewis got asked a few questions and he came out with the famous, you can't practice soiling yourself.
But a better phrase.
Yeah, but to that sort of degree. And the thing I liked about that game was the words beforehand. It wasn't overly personal. It was all about the game. And they made that game a big moment. They made it a must-watch game. The viewing figures must have gone through the roof for that because everyone made sure that they watched that match. The match didn't quite deliver to the standard of what we sort of expected from both players, but they hyped it, they egged it, which obviously makes the situation harder to play. Now, when you look at that dynamic in that game, I really enjoyed watching it. The interactions, the looking, like Adrian Lewis trying to engage with Price, Price looking away, then Price celebrating, Lewis celebrating. It really was, that's what I want to see more of. I didn't call that a bust-up. I call that something that I like to see in solo head-to-head sport.
It was a little bit like a boxing heavyweight contest. You know, one of those pay-per-view matches where they give the trash talk one end and the trash talk the other end. It was a little bit like that, wasn't it?
I mean, the thing is, right, I want to see more of it. I really do. And I speak to players quite often who, you know, backstage, they'll say one thing in front of the camera and they say the other. And the reason is they go, well, I don't want to look silly if I go and lose. Well, you're already thinking about losing now, aren't you? You know, actually, it's a show at the same time. You know, this is entertainment as well as a sporting contest. So I do like it when we get to see that entertainment factor. There's a reason we talk about that game and not other games where people have gone up and thrown 100 average or played fantastic matches, because fantastic matches now are every single week. You will always see a fantastic match. We talk about these games because they had something extra, and sometimes I'd like games that have a bit more, and I'd like to see some more of that, certainly moving forward if darts is going to continue to grow.
We can't talk about a video like this without talking about Peter One Dart Manley and that world final against Phil Taylor in 2002. Taylor drubs him 7-0, completely beats him off the board, and then Manley off stage. Phil keeps the hand out there.
That one is a moment of personal frustration. I don't see that as a major bust-up. They would have rectified that within about 30. That's the other thing I'll say about these bust-ups. The tour is a very small-knit community. And with that, any bust-ups are normally rectified the very next day or the same day, and it's all forgotten very, very quickly because it's the heat of the moment, and it's a sport where you don't win, you don't get paid. So there is going to be tension at times. That for Peter Manley, you've got to think he's played all year to qualify for the World Championships. He's got to the World Championship final, the build-up, the viewing numbers are big, the prize money is big, the chance to be world champion, a title that carries you around for the rest of your life, and you don't win a set. I mean, you're going to be distraught. And that's what it was. Manley just wanted some time to himself. Probably didn't want the traditional, you didn't really turn up there, mate conversation that you get. I get that. And, from personal experience, the first time I played at the World Championship, 1-0 up against Darius Labanauskas, broke him in the second set, think I'm going to go on and win it, I lost it. And I've never been so miserable in my life. Christmas, I didn't even put the decoration. The missus had to do it all for me. I love Christmas, and I was so miserable that year. I just couldn't snap out of it till about January. So I can't imagine what it must have been like to lose that World Final.
Must have been worse the second year you played Darius.
And probably the third and fourth time I played him as well. He's a bit of a pain in my backside.
Let's talk about another Manley incident against Adrian Lewis, 2006 World Championship. You having it large, Adrian?
Interesting, right? Because that expression there, having it large, Adrian, is possibly one of the most misquoted things in darts. Because everyone thinks he said that because that's what the commentators say and everything. But I am reliably informed that actually he said, having a laugh, Adrian. So interesting there, a little bit of insight there into that one. But everyone, even I, for years thought it was having it large, Adrian, but it's having a laugh. With that situation, Adrian Lewis walking off the stage, you've just shown your hand. I mean, Adrian Lewis at the time we didn't have young players in the sport at the time Adrian Lewis was doing this. He was a complete novelty, but at the same time, quality. And everyone knew the quality he had. And Peter Manley, at that period of time, was just trying to get under his skin. And Adrian Lewis shown him that it was working. Sometimes you've got to have a poker face. We've seen it recently, haven't we, at the Grand Slam, James Wade and Mickey Mansell. Yeah. James Wade saying, I didn't like the way he took his darts out slowly. Mickey Mansell said, well, if you don't like that, I'm going to give you it more. It's not my job to make you feel comfortable. It's my job to make you feel uncomfortable. And what Adrian Lewis did in that situation was show Peter Manley that he was winning.
Play devil's advocate. Further down the line, did that actually help Adrian's development, that one moment?
Oh, absolutely. You learn. You don't always learn from doing things right. You can learn from doing things wrong. And most of the time, you do learn from doing things wrong because it hurts, because you don't want to be making mistakes, especially when there's so much money on the line, so much prestige, ranking, everything that comes with that. And certainly the World Championships nowadays, you do well there. We're talking quarterfinals. You win that game, get to the semis, people are putting your name in the Premier League conversation, the Premier League shortlist. So absolutely, in those situations, if you get something wrong, there's lots to learn from and develop.
One more recently, Ricardo Pietrezco against Luke Littler on the Euro Tour. That was, I suppose I'm going to use the word tempestuous again. It was one of those moments where it just felt like the heat of the battle really brimmed up to a point where it maybe boiled over the top, particularly for Ricardo.
Remind me of tempestuous?
It gets a bit fiery.
Bit fiery, yeah. So that's a different factor. That's an extra factor. That's something that maybe we didn't see so much back in some of the older clips that are available in darting bust-ups. Because what's different about that is a lot of that comes from crowd interaction, which now we're starting to see a lot more of. We're seeing the attitude of crowds change. We're seeing the dynamic of a crowd change. I remember going to the World Match Play in 97, 98. It was the best of order. You wouldn't be able to move without someone looking at you. Where nowadays it's more boisterous, it's more of a football crowd, there's chanting, there's cheering, and now we're starting to get favourites. Certainly over in Germany, they back their own. Over here, everyone's a big fan of Luke Littler. We're starting to get crowd favourites and crowd developers. Even Bunting, someone who's getting a bit of a following as well. So with that, we're starting to get a bit of a, we want this guy to win. So we're going to cheer him, we're going to boo him, we're going to whistle, we're going to make all this noise, we're going to get involved, we're going to engage with this game. And that's the way it's going, and that's the way I don't see it stopping at the moment. I don't see how you can stop that. So we're going to see more of that, and the more the players play up to it, the more the crowd's going to interact. Now, The businessman inside me says, fantastic, that's going to sell tickets. And that's going to be, and that's why the Premier League sold out so quickly. That's why the World Championship sold out in the pre-sale, because of those sort of moments, and because of like the camera going around the crowd, and I could get on TV if I'm be loud and I'd be out there. So it's changing. It is really, really changing, and I think we're going to see more of that if the players don't know how to change that dynamic.
And then we also had the Nicholson wave to Taylor, and that is how we're going to say goodbye. Matt, thank you for now. Well, there's been some interesting incidents over the years, hasn't there? And I'm sure there's going to be one or two fun ones out there before too long.
My dad's disabled. I'm his main carer. My dad had a fall whilst I was away. There's another worker there. It's quite hard to relax sometimes when you're actually not at work. My parents split up. I just kind of took it how it was, really. It didn't faze me, I don't think. 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, so it was just a bit like that, really.
Sometimes I feel like I get more lucky if I wear my lucky trousers.
Yeah, I was gaining like 10,000 subs a month in lockdown.
I got picked on for being different, but when I played darts, I was allowed to be me.
It's like, oh, you're running around like a madman, and blah, like, yeah, never seen you so happy. I was like, what?
I did actually give him a little bit of advice. Can you remember what I said, Mason?
So stop moving your body.
Oh, said stop missing.
Yeah. I'm not going to actually. I'll put it there later. I'll end up pulling it off the wall. I told you.